And here he is, Dr. Msweli. Welcome to Multi Marketing on Instagram. You are live on Multi Marketing right now. How are you this afternoon, my good sir?
I'm doing well, Nishad. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me perfectly fine?
I can hear you perfectly fine. The reason I'm asking is because I'm at a hotel. We have a workshop that we're launching, so there's a little bit of a buzz at the background. So I'm not sure if that's translating. Because
Yes. We can hear a little bit of buzz, but you are very audible, so it's perfectly fine as long as we can hear you. So, welcome to Multi Marketing on Instagram. I believe this is the first interview we're doing in about 7 months, I believe. I last interviewed you in person at the Durban International Book Fair last year when you were talking about your two books. You had Rooms and Ruins, and the other one, I can't remember. It was a poetry book.
wow, yeah, it was Neither Noir poetry collection.
Neither nor I. Yes, yes, I remember that very well. So you are here now. You are featured in the Multi Marketing Anthology 2025. You also have since released another further two books to your name. So a lot has been happening. We're going to be talking about all of that. Give a short introduction of yourself. Who is Sakhile Msweli?
My name is Sakhile Msweli. I'm a research and clinical psychologist. I work for the Department of Health, but I'm also in private practice. I'm an author now and a poet. I suppose I can call myself that. And I think that really is the part of that makes me here today, and that's the one thing that I'm really excited about. I think it has brought back such a spark of life back into my life. You know, creating and telling stories. I feel like that's something that I've always wanted to do, but never sort of saw it as a viable way of living. I think, you know, there isn't much motivation, or there isn't much that happens at community levels that says to people, be creative, right? And you can see that as a way of activism, or as a way of preserving culture, as a way of preserving identity and ensuring that there's no erosion. There's so much that is linked to creativity that we haven't yet tapped into, I think, or that we have had tapped into before, but as technology, as you know, modernity's happened, and as our country has continued to grow, we've sort of left some of those things behind, and it's such a shame. And for me to find it in this way, it's just been therapeutic, and I get so excited by it.
How and when did you start writing? How did you start getting into this world of literature and writing poetry and short stories?
So the story of me writing creatively started in 2019. So we just, and 2019 I was doing my ComServe. I finished my ComServe 2020, and the country goes into COVID lockdown. And here I am. I just finished my PhD. I had just finished my ComServe as a clinical psychologist, and I was unemployed. Had to go back home, and I've done. At that point, I'm thinking I've done everything that I was told to do, right? In terms of academics, I had stayed up all night reading and writing research papers, still very much unfulfilled in terms of being able to tell my own stories. Don't get me wrong, I love the work that I do as a clinician, as a therapist, but there's always been that itch in my chest to want to also craft my own ideas and see them in paper. And so I started writing, and I don't know why at the time, which is a poetry collection. And someone said, why are you wasting your time? People are not going to buy a poetry collection. And I was like, oh no. But like I poured my heart onto this piece of work. And then a friend of mine had given me a short story book collection. Can't remember what it's called. I think it's titled Fairy Tales for the Young, something along those lines. So I started reading it, and I got inspired, and then the Rooms and Ruins came about. So Rooms and Ruins took maybe 3 months from inception to like publication, because I was just, I'm going to use the word pregnant. I was so pregnant with ideas, and the frustrations of having followed the streamlined way to success, and having had that being thrown back on my face. But again, that took some time, you know, for me to get to that place. And I think once I got a taste of it. It's almost gotten, dare I use the word, addictive. But I think a more healthier word that I can use, which is true to me, I found it very, very therapeutic. I find sitting down on an empty page or with my recorder in hand and pressing play, and this whole world sort of just unveils itself. And I like to think of myself as, I think there's like maybe three types of writers, which I've conceptualized. I think there's the farmers, there's the constructionist worker, and and then there's the ones in between. I think I'm more of a farmer. Like I would get an idea of maybe a story or a poem, and if I have my recorder in hand, I just start off with this one character and I go through the emotions of the character, and then more things start happening. I don't know where the story is going. I'm as shocked as by the twists and turns that the characters end up encountering. So I think in that way, for me, it is also just entertaining to be in this world where, yeah, one needs to tap into.
Indeed. So I remember you talking about Rooms and Ruins and Neither Nor didn't take long between each other. They were published in sort of rapid succession. Just talk us through that whole process of publishing one book into another and what differentiates Rooms and Ruins from Neither Nor.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'd written this whole manuscript of Nine and Five, which is a poetry collection, and I was really struggling to find a home for it. And then someone started talking to me about self-publishing, but then said, poetries don't really sell that well. And so I went into the space where I said, okay, then what can I do? Because I do want to publish. So I started writing Rooms and Ruins. It did fairly well in terms of sales. So what happened is, oh, I'm now getting my back for this book that I've self-published. And what do you know? I have enough to now publish the actual book that I wanted to publish. So I think that's how that quick succession happened, because I had a manuscript ready. It's just that I was not confident enough as a writer. It was my first time undertaking such a project. There was a lot of self doubt, walking into the space of art and not having any sort of training in terms of doing this, or creating. And yeah, and finding that, oh, it's not so different from academia if you approach it very traditionally. There's also going to be, structures in place and checks and knots that are put there, which makes it very, very difficult for one to be able, for creatives to put their work out there and feel like they can benefit from that process. I think there's also this emotional and psychological toll that that whole process from creation to having your stuff out there and disseminating it, that can take if you don't have the sort of support that now I have with the network that Blooming network that we're in, as being part of the multi-marketing team, and having just a culture and a collective of people that are there for you as a creative. I think that has been life-changing for me, and I know for a number of other artists that belong into that grouping. And so, yeah, that's how that happened, right? I had a manuscript finished. I started working on a new manuscript that did fairly well financially. It then gave birth to what was meant to be my first book anyway.
Okay, and then since then, before we get to the multi-marketing anthology, you have now published two further of your own books. What are the titles of those books? Where can people find them, and what is it about?
The two, one is titled Juanele Blanc. Um, Juanele Blanc, and I have these copies because I'm here in Joburg wanted to buy them. So Juanele Blanc came from, I was writing Nado Noir, so if you, Noir as being black, Blanc being white, just direct translations. And I felt that, again, this is a poetry collection. And so at the time I was writing Blanc, it was more of an activist stance, and we can't keep our hands clean all the time. If we want to see change, and I think it carries a lot of themes that I carry as a writer in terms of injustice, themes around race, themes around context, themes around gender, sexuality, and all of those things. And And then a tragedy happened where I lost a very close friend of mine, who's Wanele, and hence now we have Wanele Plank. I lost Wanele. I was nearing the end of writing the collection. And that loss, I think, then it shifted the sort of feel of the collection. And now it's divided into three sections. It shifted it because now I was, all of a sudden, I'm thrusted into this space where I have this immense grief and anger at the way that the loss happened. And so, with that being said, I found myself really drowning in a lot of difficult emotions. And as that was happening, I said, hang on, what would healing look like? And hence we have the Shape of Healing, which again is a collection of short stories. So I said, perhaps healing would look something like this. And as I was battling with the idea of healing, I realized that this is non-linear, this is not clean, this is messy, but it is what it is, and it's about allowing oneself to be in the moment, right? Allowing the pain, allowing also the possibility of a different tomorrow and what that would feel like, and almost imagining a better day than what the current situation felt like at the time. And so I felt like the one book was quite heavy, was born from grief, and the other is born from a place of, if I was to step out of this darkness, what would light look like? What would an easier, lighter, but not downplaying what the experience is, right? And so I think they work well together to balance each other out in some way or form.
And those two books and your first two books, where can people find them?
These current books, you can find them on Take a Lot. They're available on Take a Lot. If you go on my Instagram page, which is Sakhile Msweli, you can DM me directly, and I can ship the books to you. Looking to have the books at the multi-marketing store soon. So there's a lot going on in terms of where I'm trying, in terms of distribution, and where I want people to be able to access these books. They're also available in the form of ebooks on Amazon Kindle bookstore. So there's also that for those people that don't prefer, maybe don't like trees being chopped and prefer to to read on screen, which I struggle with. So there's also that option for people who want to access it. Yeah.
So yes, you can now. I think you're a five-time published author. You've got your first two books, your last two books, and
Yeah.
then this one from the mmstore.co.za, Multi-Marketing Anthology 2025. I think I touched on it earlier when I said that we first had our interaction at the Durban International Book Fair last year.
Yeah.
So talk people through that from meeting myself at the book fair to getting published in this collection. How has your experience been with multi-marketing? How did you find the whole experience? Just talk us through that as well.
Oh, it's been such an amazing experience. Nusha, you held my hand from the first time you saw. I was standing by the elevator, just nervous with all these creatives all around, the students at the Durban Book Fair. It's a huge affair. It's an international book fair. So you came very warm and you guided me through the process of what the interview would be like. It was my first interview as a creative. I was pretty nervous, and I had another brilliant author there with me, which I think also just helped buffer the situation, right? Also, who works at a health space, but who finds as an outlet in the arts. And so that was an amazing experience. And then being brought in by you and the team into the network that now we have, where ideas are shared, where opportunities are shared, where things such as marketing ideas are shared, publication ideas are shared, even to grassroots things such as sharing your piece of work and having other people look at it and interact with it. I think it's been such a containing space for me. It's been like finding family that I think a lot of creatives need. I feel like creativity and or maybe being an artist, whether you're an author or a poet, or just someone who does abstract art, I find that it can be very isolating, right? We know the most depressed people are artists, right? uh, but also we bring so much joy through the work that we do. And so I find that being part of the network through multi-marketing and through meeting you and the rest of the team, that's what it's done for me. It's just it's just afforded me a space of meeting like-minded people and knowing that I have a safe holding space there. And where there's no judgment and just it's affirming to know that, whatever sort of feedback you're getting it from people that want to see you do better. And I don't know, but it's done something for my ego. I feel so good. That's I feel just amazing knowing that there's people who also see and take art seriously. Because that sometimes that will exist outside of your biological family, outside of your friendship cycles, outside of your colleagues, but you do need to find it somewhere because it's really, really critical. And for me, I found it through the marketing team.
Coming on to the anthology itself, you have 8 poems that you have
Yeah.
submitted that are published in here. I'm going to run through the names real quick, and maybe you can give us an idea of what the themes of your poetry that you submitted are in, and what you were feeling when you wrote them. So the poems that you have here are Before He Became a Man, Dancers, Inkomo Kababa,
Yeah.
Inkomo Kamama, Inkomo Yokofihla, Itole, Inkomo Yokogezwa Komuzi, Gods and the Monsters That Worship Them. So these are your 8 poems that are in the anthology. Just talk us through them. What were you feeling? What is the themes behind them, etc.?
So the whole collection, I think, its title is Ngom, and it it's so bizarre how inspiration comes to us, right? I was literally driving from work. It was a Friday afternoon. I'm driving from work, and there's this nice bakkie and a trailer, and in the trailer there was a car, right, in Gom. So there's this car. It's a Friday. It's moving around as they often do when we've seen them on the roads when we're driving behind them. And something struck me when we were at the streetlights and we actually stopped and I caught the cow's eye. And I was like, my goodness, right? I have culturally, I know what's about to happen to this animal, right? Because it's going to get slaughtered, whether or not it's a funeral, whether it's a wedding, celebratory, or whatever the case may be. But it has a purpose and its life is about to end. But it has no idea. And that feeling of entrapment, that feeling of being being carried circumstance and not necessarily having full autonomy of where we go. I was like, I identify with it. And it really struck me emotionally at that moment. I was like, wow, this is a really something that, I've often seen a number of times, but has never translated into anything significant for me up until that moment. And so when the opportunity from marketing came to contribute to the anthology, I still had that image. I have it in my phone even today because I literally took a photo of that image and I use that as the backdrop. And so when we look at cows, they're quite significant, right, in across different cultures for a number of reasons. And spiritually, for us Africans, they also connect us to our ancestors, our being, our sense of who we are. And so I have these different cows, and each of them represents something. In the African culture, Nkomoga Mama is only paid as part of Ilobola if the wife was a virgin and she also kept herself, pure. And we know what that means in terms of when we translate in patriarchy and the policing of women's bodies. And then in Nkomoga Baba again. So all of these different cows, the titles represent something significant in culture. And Itole being this young calf, right? It translates into calf. So it's like a very young, yeah. And everyone is happy when there's new cars in the family, because we already are projecting wealth, we're projecting whether or not we're going to sell this, whether or not this is going to, have its own cars in the future. And so there is an anticipation of what that little cow it means in the family. Similarly to when families have children, right? When they give birth, there's an understanding. Parents have this understanding that, okay, my child is going to be this and this and this. They have all these beautiful futures dreamed up. Sometimes they don't. Reality does not necessarily align with that, and what happens. And so, again, you see that in the poetry, I revisit those themes of what happens when the envisioned future does not necessarily align with the realities of our family members, of the people that we love. Inkomonga Mama is about this woman, rural woman whose husband is gone and work in Joburg, a story that we all know, comes back home, is never around to help with the children. So that fragmentation of the family structure is something that work sort of speaks to monsters and gods and the monsters that worship them, speaking about the people that have been excommunicated from mainstream religion and things such as that. So I suppose the thematically it carries a lot of what is in neither Noah, but very condensed and in a different way of storytelling than I had approached poetry in that particular collection. So again, I find that it was a vehicle for me to explore poetry writing in a different way and storytelling in a different way. And that's what gets me excited. Not like recreating, but finding different ways of approaching the use of words.
Indeed. And as you said that you took a picture of the cow, I would have liked to have you have that picture next to the poem itself so people can also visualize what you are visualizing with that. And I think a lot of that is what is represented within the anthology, especially with we have one of our youngest entrants this year in Johara Sheikh, and her poetry is
Yeah.
accompanied with illustrations that she's drawn to basically give you an image in her mind of what she was projecting as she wrote it. So I do like when new authors provide that kind of visual aid to their poetry, and I see a lot of that now coming up with these new poetry books that have visuals accompanying the text. So it gives you a bit of a best of both worlds because, like they say, a picture paints 1,000 words, but a
Yeah.
thousand words can also paint a picture. It works both ways. So I like
So
that. I like that. Um, so, like you were saying, your poetry, the different poems that you write are based on different things. And I think a lot of writers also can relate to that, in that, for myself personally as well, a lot of the short stories that I write and contribute in the anthology are different for each year. There's different themes
yeah.
that appeal to a different audience. Would you say that is something similar with your poetry, where every poem you write is for someone different, or is there a general theme that's woven through there?
I think I think it's different, but also what I'm finding is that I only have a limited number of stories, right? And there is no new story. Every story we've ever had is a rehashing and a retelling in a different artistic way of a story that we've heard before. And so I think it's about finding that nice golden thread without necessarily losing who you are. Because I find that for me, my poetry comes from a place of activism, it comes from a place of healing, it comes from a place of sometimes being angry with how things are working. And so there is that need to stay true to who I am and what drives me to create. But I suppose the exercise is, how do I not sound like a broken record, but like, how do I re-envision this telling? And maybe if I'm looking at it from a different angle, it sounds completely different. And when you hear people talk about it, you're like, oh wait, is that how it's landed for you? Because that's not that's not in any way what I had in my mind. But again, what I love about art is its ability to have a life of its own. Right? Once you give birth to it, once it's out in the ether, you really don't have any control of how that is consumed. So that's the part that I quite enjoy.
Indeed. So for readers of your work who like what you've written in the anthology, they like Rooms and Runes, they like Nether Noir, they like Corneille Blanc, they like The Shape of Healing, can they expect to see you release more in the future, or is this like the end of the poetry journey for you, or short stories in that for that matter?
uh, I'm creating a little archive. I don't think I can stop anytime soon in terms of writing. Each day comes with something completely different. Each season brings a different experience that triggers ideas. There was something that was posted in a blooming network. There was an opportunity, I think, by one of the departments or the other, where they were saying we must work on manuscripts. So me being me and my ADHD, I went straight into like preparing a manuscript without reading it. Oh, actually, if you one of the employees of the department, you can't apply. But now it means I have a manuscript, right? I'm sitting with a lovely manuscript which I'm now reworking and rehashing, and also because of I'm a Marvel fan, and now I have 4 books, and each of them, and this happened completely by chance. Each of them sort of resembles the different stones that Thanos had on his Infinity Gauntlet, the different colors. I want the 5th book to just complete my Infinity Gauntlet. So it's some of it just really comes from the funny, very free, easy-spirited place whereas maybe the content of the work itself can be quite heavy. So, yeah,
Wow.
there's definitely some work coming in the future.
I really hope at some point, I know she's not here, but I really hope at some point Lauren B. Madure, who is one of our Blooming Network members, sees this video because she is a massive Marvel fan. And I think she'll be fascinated when she hears that you also have that, and then your books by accident, each of the colors with the colors of the Infinity Stones. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So, with you releasing more in the future, I think there's hope that we probably will see you in next year's anthology, probably in future anthologies,
Yes, yes,
you
yes.
know.
Oh, I can't wait. Definitely in the upcoming anthologies, I'm going there. I'm going to push myself into contributing perhaps something different every time. I'm thinking maybe my next contribution must be a short story, or something related to that, or a mix of poetry and short stories. So I'm looking forward really into fostering this relationship, and seeing where it takes us.
Indeed. And another, you just mentioned something. Heidi Hahn herself has submitted short stories that contain poetry within the stories themselves. So that's something also that maybe you could look into to combine the two when you contribute to the anthology. Now,
Oh.
being a five-time published author, how have people around you reacted to you being published? What was the feeling on the home front when they saw all these different books come out?
The people say, where do you get the time? People say, where do you get the time? But also, I think I've been fortunate to have a very like warm reception in terms of my work. A lot of the subject matters are quite heavy, like I said, and so I think there is a sobering effect that people experience when they go through my work. I'm a very light-hearted person in general. I laugh at myself, and I think that's how I've survived this past decade, given how crazy everything is in the world. So I think there is a little bit of that cognitive shift, right? When people engage with the work, and they see the sort of difficult subject matters, but again, there's always that laugh raft for change and possibility, and I think what I try to do is to capture that yin and yang, to say, look, nothing is completely good and nothing is completely bad. How can we see things for what they are, and how can we appreciate things for what they are? And part of that comes from acceptance, and then acting from a place of mindfulness, acting from a place of just collection, as a human species. Yeah.
Indeed. So, you being published so many times over, what advice can you now give to other up and coming artists, authors, poets? I know you're very close to another one of the published poets in the anthology by the name of Shaka Mabena. He's an aspiring poet. He's been published now. But for those who are just getting their feet wet in publishing, for those who haven't been published that are aspiring, what advice can you impart to them?
Look, there's two things. Believe in your gift. Let that be the motivating factor. Whether or not it's going to land well with other people, that should not determine or deter you from creating. Because I find that we create for ourselves more than anything. And if you create for yourself, you will never be disappointed by poor reception or no reception, because you would have brought into this world something that did not exist. And for me, creativity is the closest thing there is to God or the God entity or the creator, because it's that same energy of bringing something that has never existed in this plane, and you drawing it and putting it in, into this existence. Whether or not people accept it, whether or not people get it, you would have done your job. And so I think there's a lot of voices that tell us not to do things. And for anyone who's looking to create, who's looking to write, who's looking to do poetry, just write, just do it. The more you do it, the better at it you get. And also seek advice from people. Like, have a community of practice, have a community like our network, our blooming network. Have people who are like-minded, who will look at your work and be open to feedback. We like to use the word, people use the word criticism, and they see it and they take a negative connotation. I say have as many people say things about your work as you possibly can, because in that sometimes the magic happens and you're like, oh no, that's not internship, but yeah, hell yeah, that's where I want to go. And so take it, be open to it, open to the process. Don't stop writing, write, have an archive. Whenever an opportunity comes, you know there's a space where you can go, because you're never going to know. You're never going to know. Maybe when an opportunity comes by, emotionally, physically, in terms of time, in terms of resources, you're not ready. But if you have an archive of work that you've done, you can always go and pull a few, few poems, a few stories, and contribute, and that could be life changing. You never know when is your best seller. So put stuff out there. One day, you'll have your bestseller, and it will drag along everything else that you've ever written or ever touched. And so that's my philosophy at this point.
And I like how you said have an archive, because you never know when the opportunity will arise. And that literally was the whole idea and understanding behind the anthology itself, was people had things in stock and they didn't know how to put it out there. And
Yeah.
then this opportunity came around. They were like, that's the perfect opportunity to put it in. So for those who want to find you online, you actually do have a picture of yourself right here in the anthology. Those who want to find you online, where can they find you on social media?
On social media, it's Sakhile Msweli on Instagram. It's Sakhile Msweli on Facebook. You can also drop me an email on sakhile.s@yahoo.com. Books are available on Take a Lot. Books are available on Amazon and soon on Multi Marketing store. Yeah, so just Google LinkedIn. Just type my name on Google. Something should come up, and then you can follow some of those links.
Thank you, Ms. Msweli, for being here. Before we go, I did ask you to pick a poem, excuse me, for everyone to hear. So I'm sure you picked one out for us. So to play us out, the stage is yours.
All right, I'm going to read a poem titled Itole, right? The calf. There's a picture of me as a young boy, cringed on my father's car, one hand steadying me, the other gripping a bottle of beer. Though time would tangle us in complications, back then he carried me on his shoulders. I was his pride, I was his joy. But now, when I grew, my pride, my rainbow, took that joy from him. And with it, love left our hearts. Yet, love still found me. It wore different faces, spoke in different voices. I never expected, I never expected, arrived in moments I could never predict. But always it was love. Sometimes as soft as a whisper, sometimes as bold as a storm. It was always love. Even now, in my father's withered face, as we make small talk discussing today's politics. I know he must have loved me to have heard this much, watching me grow in a world full of jackals.
Wow. Absolutely wonderful. So, guys, if you like the poetry that you've heard, if you want to read more of his poetry, Multi Marketing Anthology available on mmstore.co.za is a place to go. He also has his other four books that you can find on Amazon or his personal website, as he said. I don't see any questions. So, to wrap things up, what are your final remarks, concluding remarks to everyone who's watching this?
For all the creatives, continue to create. For everyone who needs healing, allow the soil to carry you, allow the sun to warm your heart, and may you find whatever it is that you desire in your life. Thank you again, Nishad and Multi Marketing team, for just continuing to be an inspiration. I can't wait to contribute. I know I have something to contribute soon. I don't know if I've missed the dates. Please do forgive me. For those who understand, I do have ADHD, so things there do tend to get a little bit crazy on my side. But thank you again for your patience and the care in which you carry the team.
And thank you for giving us your time this afternoon, Mr. Msweli, and everyone who's watching. Thank you for being here. So, for Mr. Msweli, thank you for your time this afternoon. Thank you for everyone watching. And until we see you guys again, we will see you guys down the road. Peace.
Bye.